Welcome back to the Fighter Pilot's Guide to Living. Taco and I are once again so excited to bring you part of Roe Skid Massey's story, picking up with his time at VF 101, the RAG in Oceania. Here's a little bit about Roe's background. He graduated high school at Gallatin High School in 1975 and then graduated MTSU with a degree in aerospace administration. He completed naval flight training and was selected for F-14 Tomcats in Virginia Beach, Virginia. As a junior officer, Roe was an F-14 instructor, carrier qualification phase leader, and a graduate of the Naval Fighter Weapons School, TOPGUN. He served as CVW-17 Landing Signals Officer, LSO, followed by ComNav Airlant, LSO. He received his master's degree in international security and strategic studies from the Naval War College, and following his tour as commanding officer of 2 F-14 squadrons, he was assigned as the head aviation officer detailer in Memphis, Tennessee, responsible for the duty assignments of approximately 13,000 naval aviation officers. After promotion to captain, he was selected for Carrier Air Wing Commander 17, located in Virginia Beach, flying the F-14 Tomcat and F-18 Hornet, and was responsible for 10 squadrons, approximately 80 aircraft, and 1,800 personnel. Following his tour as Carrier Air Wing Commander in Virginia Beach, Virginia, he was subsequently assigned a second duty assignment as Carrier Wing Commander 9 in Lemoore, California. Roe has flown over 4,500 hours in fighter aircraft, has been on 8 extended deployments, and achieved over 1,300 carrier-arrested landings. He's married to Ruth Martindale Massey of Murfreesboro, and they have 2 wonderful children, Will and Ryan, and 4 beautiful grandchildren.
I liked my time at 101. It was, I enjoyed waving. I enjoyed the time. Got to fly a lot. Got to meet a whole lot of nice, interesting people, and learned a lot about flying and fighting the airplane there too. So
For sure. And you got to room with Hoser for 3 years, you said, share an office with Hoser, who
yes,
yeah, what was that like? I mean, and for those who don't know Hoser is Joe Satrapa, and he is perhaps, it depends on who you ask, but one of the top aviators
Hoser
of all time.
was a true legend. Great guy, very nice. I mean, he was humble, but yet he still had the fighter pilot mentality that we all did. We were all invisible. We were all made of nerve. We were all bulletproof. And but Hoser, if somebody just kind of listened to him talk, they think that he was full of it. But his stories were true. I saw him. Um, and he had on his desk, he had the old calendar blotter, was about 5 years old. He never changed it. And all over it was phone numbers of everybody that he knew. You know, a lot of people in D.C. He and John Lamo were big buds, who was the second nav at the time. But a typical Hoser story is we're sitting in the phase leader's office, and he comes back from a guns hop, still in his flight gear, and he writes a math, he writes a gripe, and he says that the gun shoots 3 mils high and 3 mils right. Now, for that means at 1,000 feet, the bullet is 3 feet high and 3 feet right. And I'm like, Hoser, there is no way you can see that minuscule difference. So I get his HUD tape. Will and I get his HUD tape, and we go frame by frame and see where the bullets are going. And no kidding, it's exactly 3 mils high and 3 mils right. And he didn't have time to go back and look at his tape. He's still in his flight gear. So that is typical. He was the best gunnery pilot I've ever seen, ever, to this day, and probably for anybody out there. Another gun story is at the time, we would have the banner was towed by a Learjet out of Newport News. They would usually tow for us, and they show up and they present us this nice briefing of they had come out with this acoustical scoring device that was about the size of a basketball that went up on the just in front of the spreader bar on the banner. And they were like, "Oh, this thing is expensive. We're going to do this." And, and Hoser comes in, he's testing this out, and he walks in and goes, in his gravelly voice, he said, "Hey, Skid, I'm going to go out here and shoot this thing off." First pass rolls in, shoots it off. I mean, it's like, and they just went nuts because that was the only prototype that they had. He goes out there and shoots it off and says, "Yep." so so that's a typical Hoser story. I mean, he was deadly with the gun. He was great at flying the airplane. He taught me a lot about it, how to fight the airplane. But just a great person.
That's really incredible. Do you have any about his? Because he was also good at just angering people or just saying things that were,
Oh God,
the
oh
Hoser
God.
things. Do you have any Hoser things that he
Say those
said that you
things.
can share that aren't
Yeah,
too
I wrote.
crazy?
Yeah, I wrote some down. Um, well, he went to the academy, and I think he was in the same class maybe as his bad Fred, but he also Roger Staubach went to the academy, and they were classmates, and he was always talking about him, playing football and throwing football with Roger Staubach, who didn't, continue on his Navy career. He went on to be a professional, obviously. Um, but Hoser would always say, "Yeah, I graduated from the academy number 2," and he said from the bottom. But so, and he was very humble, but he was great, and he knew it. Everybody else knew it, and those that doubted him just didn't know him well enough to know that he was. He would drive a van, and he had Lao 7, the AIM 9 adapters on each side of his van, and he got an old Sidewinder from the Ordies. The Ordie loved him, and he had 2 Sidewinders on his van that he would drive around. So,
That's amazing. He's actually got a book. I have it, I think, upstairs in my library. If you haven't read it, it's fascinating. Just the
yeah,
stories he
I haven't
Hoser
tells.
here
read it.
shoot, right? Isn't
Yeah,
that what it's
yeah,
called? Hoser here
yep,
shoot?
yeah.
Yeah. So another Hoser story is we had been, and this was shortly after we get the F-14, the A plus at the time. It then became the B. So we get the A plus. We've got a handful of them, and only a few of us were initially qualified to fly it. Hoser was one, me in the CQ, and I think some of the guys in tactics. There were only 4 or 5 initial pilots in Rios that were qualified to fly the A plus. Well, we had a CQ debt going, and it was one of the CQ rarely that I didn't have to go on because we had a goose hunting trip planned. So it was Hoser, Kevin Haney, myself, and Tom Zellabor, who was ended up being a 3-star. We all load up in 2 brand new A pluses to go goose hunting. So we're loading our guns along the canopy rails. We walk out, and it is snowing so bad. It's the only time that I know that 101 canceled a CQ overhead for FRS CQ. So as we're walking out the airplane, all the students are walking back in to the RAG into the hangar because they canceled it because it's snowing so bad. And Hoser and I are going out in 2 brand new airplanes. So we get to the hold short. Snow was literally all over the airplanes. We were going to do a section takeoff, but the viz is way below men's. We couldn't. So Hoser takes the runway, disappears in a cloud of snow, and he comes up on the radio and he said, "Hey, Skid, the snow comes up just about the time you rotate." So so we go blasting off, and we go up into New Jersey. And we're coming in, we're doing a section approach, and Hoser gives me some weird signal he sees the runway to take separation. And I'm like, I'm in a snowball here. I can't see anything. I don't know how he could see the runway. I'm not convinced he did. So, so I could see him. So I immediately joined back up on him, and we basically do a section landing in the Tomcat because I
In a
never saw the
snowstorm.
runway.
In a snowstorm.
Yeah, in the snow. So we show up at McGuire Air Force Base and we start unloading guns and everything, and they just go ballistic because nobody told them. So that was another poser story. So I mean, he was a piece of work. So
That's,
Oh,
that's
that's
what
so good.
everybody thinks of, when
Yeah.
they. I need to read that story too, or the book. I've got
Yeah.
it sitting back there. I need to read that. I've just heard so many good stories, and
Yeah. He's a
so
character.
for sure.
So you talked about the opportunity you had where you're going to do demo with 101,
yeah.
and then someone gives you a deal of a century and gives you the shot to go to Top Gun. Can you tell us about what Top Gun was like? Do you kind of any memories that you have from that time going through the course, and maybe any instructors at the time that you got to fight against, or that type? Just kind of paint the picture for what it's like to go to Top Gun around that time.
Yeah, leading up to that, we had started doing a lot of the demo maneuvers and in the trainer and doing the stuff is if you have a compressor stall here, how do you bail out of the maneuvers and so forth. And Snort was driving that show. He was the demo czar, um, and so he was the XO at the time, and so Snort came to us and said, "Hey, here's an opportunity. You can continue doing the demo or do Top Gun." Rabbit Campbell was CEO, and so we just said, "Hey, we'll do Top Gun." And so we end up going out to Top Gun, and it was a 4-week course, but it got abbreviated because they wanted to finish up before Thanksgiving, and this was probably '86, I think. Um, and so they wanted to get us out before Thanksgiving, so they crammed everything in really tight. I think we had like one day off, and it was very compressed, very intense. We had to do a lot of academics before we went out there, and as you go through, and we had about a week of academics before we ever touched the airplane, and then in the airplane, it's like game on. It was the second class when they had the F-16Ns, so the F-16s had just been there. They had gone through one class before, so they were still figuring out how they were going to employ the F-16 as adversaries against us. And it was pretty impressive. It was a great time. It was great flying. We did Yuma. We did Nellis. We did a piece of constant peg with Nellis, China Lake. We did all over the area. So it was a good time. So.
That's awesome you brought that up. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with Constant Peg and kind of what that looked like?
And that was about the fourth or fifth time I was able to do that because as a JL 103 we went out there.
Ah, that's awesome.
There was a guy that actually had participated from the Air Force side. It was a Navy exchange, and he did that. So he got us a very early exposure to this. So by the time I went out there in Top Gun, I had seen all the airplanes before. Marty Chanick was there. He was flying the floggers, some of the other airplanes that we flew against. So it was a good experience, but I'd seen it before, so that made it a whole lot easier on what to expect and how to maneuver and how to fly against those, and that really helped out a whole lot. So, but it was a great experience, and I wish more people in that era could have participated in that program because it was very worthwhile.
Yeah, I think did you notice that your first time seeing it and fighting whether it was the MiG 17 or MiG 21 or I don't know which one you fought first, but was the buck fever like a real thing? You get
Yeah,
your
and
first view of something different and
it is, and it's surprising how small the airplanes are. You get in the briefings before you get read into the program, and then you go out there and you see it. And even though you've been briefed, this is what it's going to look like, this is what it's going to do, and you go, wow, there it is. And the airplanes are a lot smaller. 17 the 21 is, if you lose sight of that, which is pretty easy, it can be all in your knickers in a blink of an eye. So the key to those airplanes is just do not lose sight. Whatever you do, don't lose sight. The flogger was easy because it was fast in a straight line, but it did maneuver well.
Hmm.
So, we cheated. We lead turn it, the snot out of it, and was able to fight it very effectively. But then again, it's because I'd seen it before. I'd had the experience of doing that before. So,
Okay.
but it was a great program, great program. I think a lot of people were able to benefit from seeing that. So,
Did you have any, like, as far as the class you went through with anybody you guys came close with, any particular memories with different crews?
yeah,
Because most of them is fleet squadrons at that point, right? They're like
yeah,
halfway through your
most
fleet
of
time.
them. Yes, most of them were fleet. Will and I were the only ones for the RAG. Will Cooney, he was in the Rippers. I don't know if you know Will Cooney or not, but Coon Dog,
No.
he was from the Rippers. His Rio, they were fleet squadrons. Rob Field, who later became the Seal of the Blues, Icefield, Brick Nelson, they were there in Hornets. So that's the first time that I had met Brick, and he was, full of swagger. He was like the snort of the Hornet community. But had a great bunch of folks going through the program when I did. A lot of very good instructors at Top Gun. I think Flex was there when I went through. Um, Beryl Collins, Rhino was out there, so a lot of good folks, a few Tomcat guys there. So it was a good experience, and that's when it was still at Miramar. So it was a good exposure, good time. So
Good time out to hang out in San Diego in the off time.
yeah,
That's so
yeah.
cool.
Different than Fallon.
Well, my one day off, yeah.
That's true.
Right. I
We're
love Flex. I wish I could get yeah, that's awesome.
yeah. I didn't realize that there were Hornets in your class. Did you guys do any mixed section, or was it strictly Tomcat and
Yep, we
strictly?
did. We did some mixed section. We did some division work. We went out to Yuma and did some simulated strikes. Nothing like it is now, where you do. It's a lot of air to ground stuff today and coming off target. But we did several air to air. The Hornets would do a dual role, where the fighters would do the fighter cap and stuff like that. But we would, and at the end of all the missions, we'd tangle it up. We'd fight each other
Yeah.
until we ran out of gas. So
So you're kind of like a unicorn now with being, I know LSOs in their JO tour then go to Top Gun, but the fact that you went to Top Gun after your reg tour and then your next tour is going to be a CAG LSO. So you have a patch on your shoulder, but you're still an LSO. There's probably not
yeah,
that many of you.
there are probably zero that get to do what I did. I had the most unusual career of staying in the cockpit. I never did joint. I was supposed to, like I was telling you before, I had verbals to the Pentagon. Matt Al Myers he was all proud of himself that he was getting me to the Pentagon, and shortly after that, I screened for command. So that's when they stuck me in the War College for 10 months. But yeah, you couldn't get away with that career these days because you didn't get enough exposure to being a well-rounded officer and being jointed.
Right.
I never had time. I was always going back to sea. So
And then in that LSO tour, can you talk about some memorable experience? Because that was obviously, or sorry, what we had talked about last night. Desert Storm kicks off in the middle of your LSO tour tail end. Uh,
yeah. So CAG LSO, great tour. We flew a lot. We were in the Red Sea for the end. We would go in and out of the Red Sea. Um, I've been through the ditch probably a dozen times now, but in the Red Sea doing ops, MCON, pretty much the entire deployment. And Desert Storm was coming down. We had the staff had been briefed that Desert Storm was going to be executed on a certain day. So, and I had orders already in hand to go be the Air Land LSO. And so the CAG pulled me aside and said, "You're not going anywhere." Said they'll just have to wait because he wasn't going to let me go with my replacement coming in, Desert Storm starting. So it was too big of an unknown for him. So I got extended on deployment again. So, but it worked out really well. I'm glad I did. If I had gone home and missed some of Desert Storm, I feel like I would have been not quite, everybody that's what you
A little
live
grumpy.
for. Yeah. So, and I told him, and he was dead set against me flying any combat missions. He goes, "You're not here to fly, you're here to get people aboard." And I kind of went around behind his back and I said, "Well, I'm already on the schedule for tomorrow night, so I'm going to go. So you can ground me or you can fly me, but I'm going to go." So he came to his senses, and I got to do several flights during Desert Storm. So
Were you only qualified in the 14 in the CAG LSO tour?
yes,
So, but you had
I
two
was.
squadrons, right?
Yeah, we had two squadrons. I had cross trained in the Hornet, and I was going to try to fly the Hornet on deployment on cruise when I was a CAG LSO, but long story on that one. Since the Saratoga was based in Florida at Mayport, the staff was Hornet heavy. Everybody except me was a Hornet guy.
Okay,
So they didn't want to have another guy taking up a squadron seat flying the Hornet. So I said, okay. So I stayed in the Tomcat. So,
got it.
but each squadron was short a pilot during that cruise. So on my non-wave days, I would fly day with one squadron and night with the other squadron. So my non-flying day, I was two flights a day. So it's kind of worn out, but I wouldn't have traded anything for it.
The-
It was a great time. So.
You also mentioned that kind of the standards shifted towards the end of that, during the Operation Desert Storm section, that like, it's not it's pass fail, it's all these things. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that shifted?
Yeah. So it come to a point in that deployment, we're close to the end of the deployment. We're out there in the Red Sea, starting to do combat flights. And so I told all my teams, I said, if you have to fly, you go fly. You're not going to take your waving day does not take precedence over filling the flight schedule. So I almost kicked everybody off the platform, and I would go out there and, to a certain degree, did solo ops on the platform, and did if guy got aboard, he got an okay. So everybody's green board looks great. Because the last thing they needed was worried about coming back at night, because that was the majority of our missions. So we would come back, give them an okay. Life is good. For once, the LSO is a welcome member of every ready room instead of getting things thrown at us. So that worked out really well. And I would spend my wave day, I'd pretty much spend all day on the platform. We would have some breaks between. The missions were long, so I got some breaks. I ended up sleeping a lot. Right underneath the LSO platform, there's a fire main, with a big turn handle. I
Mhm.
would get, I would sit down on that, go to sleep, and then the boss would call me and said, "Hey, Skid, we got a guy at 5 miles." So I'd go up to the platform, catch him, because we would do AAA chops, Hummer, Hoover, and Hilo. And for the regular events, I just, write everybody down and just get their side number and said, "Hey, okay." Yeah, at that point, you can remember everybody's pass, every single detail about it, because at that point, we'd probably had somewhere between 8 and 10,000 sorties for the deployment. So we
Awesome.
had a lot. So
That sounds incredibly busy. I don't want to push forward past that tour if there's more to discuss there. I mean, what are there any more parts of that we should go into
of
before we
that
move on?
deployment,
Yeah.
not that I recall. If when I think about it, I'll probably think about, oh yeah, this is cool.
Yeah.
But it was great. I mean, to be a Navy lieutenant, to have that responsibility, it was very humbling, and I wouldn't trade anything for it. Got to see a lot of cool stuff. I remember one night I came up on the flight deck, and because the temperatures varied so much, that the flight deck at night, at about 3 o'clock in the morning, the flight deck was just soaking wet where it had been sweating. And I came up, and uh, it was like a mirror. One night I came up to the platform, and there was a small boy, like one of our escorts, was about 5 miles away, and there wasn't a ripple on the water. And I remember the light looked like a laser beam coming across the water to us. I just thought it was so cool, and it was nice and quiet, just waiting for the airplanes to come back. It was pretty peaceful in the times that you would think it'd just be totally hectic, but it was pretty cool. So
And you said you did most of your flying at night, so you guys were the vampire carrier, the night ops, and
yeah, pretty much, and that's kind of the way it worked for almost the rest of the deployments I did.
okay.
We were on the night page. Certainly when I was my XO tours, my CO tours, my CAG tours. It was we were the night guys, so
Hmm.
got a lot of night traps. So
Yeah. It's a weird, yeah,
yeah,
it's just a weird, weird thing to, experience. Your day wakes up at 4 in the afternoon and then go to bed at 6 in the morning, or,
oh yeah. So it was, yeah, your internal clock gets all haywire. You're
yeah,
all over the place.
yeah.
So left there, went to be the Airland LSO. Um, and last night, my wife reminded me of an incident. Oh, it was a FRSCQ. So all the rags on the East Coast are out on the ship for their CQ, for their initial CQ. So I'm herding cats. I've got a bunch of different FRS LSOs out on the platform that I'm watching over, and the Hornets were running the deck, and I'm looking around, and I guy rolls in the groove, and just by habit, I look up the angle to make sure it's a clear deck, and I see this Hornet planform and blower, and he just climbing up, and I'm like, this guy is ruining my pattern, and he just climbing up full blower, and as I'm watching him, I see this parachute open up, and the guy had jumped out of the Hornet, and he landed. And in the meantime, the Hornet's still climbing straight up. Canopy's gone, and we're all sitting there watching it. And the boss starts screaming on the 5MC. It says, "Unmanned airplane, clear the flight deck." So I've got about 12 or 15 LSOs on the platform, and I tell them to get below, and they're like stumbling all at each other. Two guys literally run face to face, knock themselves out, and fall down on the flight deck. So I'm trying to get them, hey, carry these guys down below. And in the meantime, this airplane's climbing up, and I get everybody below. And and about this time, the Hornet does this real nice wing over, and now it's pointed. It's found the center of the Earth, and it's getting airspeed, and it wants to fly. So as it gets more airspeed, the nose comes up, and it does this nice little pirouette, and it's aiming right toward the ship. So I'm like, I don't have time to get below, so I lay down in the landing area on the left ladder line of the landing area, and watch this airplane, and it disappears from view underneath the LSO platform, and it just smacks the water. Pieces go everywhere. You can hear them falling over all over the flight deck. And about that time, once it hits the water, the helo that had been over on the starboard side comes over, picks up the pilot, drops him off. We do a FOD walk down, and about no more than 10 minutes later, we're landing airplanes again. So, and the reason that he jumped out was he was transitioning. He was the XO of a squadron, transitioning from the A7 to the Hornet, and he grabbed the stick going down the CAT.
Oh,
So in the Hornet, you grab the tower rack, so you can do a hands off. Well, he grabbed the stick. The airplane says, "No, you don't want to do that," and dumps the nose. And he's looking at a face full of water. He jumps out, and now the airplane resets the attitude and starts flying away.
wow.
So it's like from then on, the CAT officers, they wouldn't shoot you unless they saw your hand.
Sorry, hands up.
Up on there. So that's why that is. So
Wow.
so yeah. So
That sounds like possibly the most frightening thing I
Yeah.
can't even imagine.
At
How
night
did
would have
that
been
feel as
At
you
night would have been
were?
more scary.
yeah, it was one of those things like, okay, let's get back to work here. It's like, let's literally pick up the pieces, because I've got airplanes, orbiting overhead, waiting to, figure out. And in the meantime, all the pieces are floating by, and all the, froth in the water. And it's not like we're going to suspend ops. We're going to quit for the day. It's like, no, let's
Yeah.
keep going. So it was right back at it.
So gotta come aboard. Um, So that was, you said that was still during the CAG LSO tour, right? Or
That was
that was
now that was
after?
when my Airland LSO.
Okay, so
So
not the department head VF 32.
no,
That
that
was
my
like,
department head was
okay,
after I did my Airland LSO
okay.
tour. I went to be a department head in VF 32.
Okay. That's, and you said something that was really interesting, and you did clarify this via email. So I still want to hear, though. You said that it was the first time the F-14 was dropping bombs as part of its mission, even though it was designed, like you said, to
Yes.
do that. Can you
Uh,
talk about that a little
yeah,
bit?
good point. When the F-14 was designed, it was designed as a fighter bomber. And in fact, in the early days, long before my time, they had a like a pallet that went under the tunnel between the two intakes that you could put a lot of 500-pound bombs under there. That was never used, but the other points on the airplane you could put bombs on, and it was a great bomber. In fact, there was a position on the wing sweep bomb that drove the wings to 55 degrees to give it a stable platform in the bombing run, but we never used that. So we started bombing, had to go back through the air to ground syllabus, and at that point we actually got some Hornet guys to come over, and we were on the staff of 101 to say how do you drop bombs, and I made a joke about it. I said it's easy. Every time I've aimed at the ground, I've hit it. So dropping bombs wasn't that hard because the system that was resident in the airplane that was never used was actually pretty good. And then we went on to drop precision guided bombs and had the lantern pod and a very very good laser system on the airplane, which was phenomenal, that you could drop some big heavy bombs on it. It turned out to be a great bomber. So,
In your time with in your department head tour with the Gypsies and starting to drop bombs, did you what was the change in the squadron? Because obviously for the longest time, VF, no A, as you guys are starting to transition to have a little bit of an A in your game. Um, was there people in the squadron that scoffed at it, like not a pound for air to
oh,
ground, all
oh,
that?
the
Yeah.
community hated it. In fact, one day, John Lehman, SecNav, came down to visit Hoser, and then that afternoon, everybody's over at the club, and I remember distinctly, John Lehman stood up in front of all the fighter bubbas and said, "As long as I'm SecNav, the F-14 will never drop a bomb." And the place erupted in cheers because we didn't want to have anything to do with bombing, with air to ground. We just wanted to be cool fighter guys, and we pushed that off. I say we, but in hindsight, they should have gotten on board earlier than we did. But when we moved to the air to ground role, once it was decided this is where we're going to go, everybody got on board really quickly and adopted it because we'd look like a bunch of idiots if we couldn't figure it out how
Yeah.
to do it. So once it got over the hurdle of said, "Yep, we're going to do this," get on board with the program, it went remarkably well.
Nice. Yeah, I think it's kind of telling too, if I'm remembering the story right, but Snort was, pretty integral of bringing the lantern pod. And didn't you guys sacrifice AMRAAM, I think, in order to get,
Yeah, we sacrificed a lot of stuff
okay,
for that, but it was well worth it. And
absolutely.
Snort did. He basically resurrected the airplane. When I was at Airland, there were a lot of proposals to do some great modernization of the Tomcat. All of them were proprietary that never got briefed, never came out of the halls of Airland, and it would have been a death knell to the Hornet. It would
Hmm.
have put it out of business. And so it never came about. I mean, there was going to be conformal tanks. There was going to be a lot more ordnance. It was going to have an APU. I mean, it was going to be a killer airplane.
Hmm.
But they decided not to go with it because as it's starting to age. So it maintained its longevity as long as it did, truly because of Snort. When he put the lantern pod on a VF-103 airplane, I believe, and started that whole evolution of the bomber. And it was fantastic. I mean, great resolution, great capability. You know, we could carry a, you know, 2,000 pound guided weapons in at the speed of heat, and just it was really remarkable as what the capabilities were then. So
Yeah, and then I mean you see it what it did in Allied force, and then on into after 9/11, like just a great strike fighter.
yeah, it really was, because when we did that, we increased the gross takeoff weight off the ship up to I believe it was 79,000 pounds. So, I mean, it was a truly remarkable airplane with a lot of capability of both air to air and air to ground, sticking that lantern pod on there. So it was nice, you know. And then we started flying with goggles. We went through several iterations of goggles and cockpit lighting to accommodate that. Um, you know, and it was, as I jokingly would say, there's, you know, the good thing about goggles is you can see everything, and the bad thing about goggles is you
So you
can
can
see
see
everything.
everything.
But that was a new twist on everything, but flying with goggles on board. Now you got the helmet mounted sight and everything. So it turned into a great machine. Couple that with the D, which was a great airplane.
Hmm.
It's I was sad to see it go. I can understand it was costing a fortune to operate, but it was truly a capable machine that I think we lost a lot by getting it out of the inventory.
Hmm. Yeah, you were talking about joining up with the C-141 in as a JO without goggles, and I, as a goggle baby, and never,
Oh yeah, I look
have
at
had
that
it
and
my
say,
whole life.
yeah,
I don't
I
know
look at back
how.
on that and go, how in the world did we do that?
Yeah.
You know, and there for a while, I don't know if they still do it, but they were telling us, hey, when you tank, take your goggles off. And I'm telling on myself here, I never took my goggles off. You know, I tanked with them. I would land with them on. It's like, why would I want to go blind when I can see everything and
Yeah.
make it so much easier? So, you know, I just tried it one night and I said, yeah, I'm going to keep these things on. They're great. So,
Yeah. I've actually heard I don't know, I've heard other people who kind of had it different where they were just so used to not having it to actually, like you said, to see everything was too scary. There's like I just need to go back to the dark.
yeah, a lot of guys did, and I'm like, no, I'm going to embrace the technology.
Yeah.
You know, we got it. We got a new HUD in the Tomcat, which was great. In fact, to a certain degree, I liked the improved HUD in the Tomcat more than I did the Hornet. Um, it had a lot of good stuff. It had a wider field of view. I mean, it was a very nice HUD finally in the Tomcat that should have been actually. So worked out real well.
Nice.
Turned into a great airplane.
And so when you were a department in the Gypsies, that was before the precision stuff, but you were doing some just normal bomb dropping
Yep.
kind
We
of
were just
dumb
doing
bomb.
dumb bombs. You know, started off with just just you know, BDUs, dumb bombs, and then we went started going to live stuff, and uh, and that was like I say, that was a steep learning curve, but it was very good, and that's what helped the airplane stay alive too. I was a big proponent of getting the GE engines, getting the new engines instead of the TF-30s, which were never supposed to go into production, um, over the air to ground. But you know, after talking to some people, they said, no, if we're going to keep the airplane alive, we got to get the air to ground mission, and we'll get the engines later, which pretty much we did across not the entire fleet, but pretty good portion of the fleet. We got the new motors. So.
Mhm. And so do you have time in all the A plus B and the D, or do you just the
Yeah, I
A?
got time in all of them.
Okay.
So when I went back and was the XO of the RAG, I flew the D as well. Not as much, but I flew. You know, at that point we had taken the A plus moniker off, and it was the B, and then I flew the D also. So the D was great. You could do most everything from the front seat, um, instead of relegating everything to the back seat. But it was a nice airplane.
Okay.
So.
I mean, having more experience, do you have a favorite, or with the Gucci-ness of the D, is that probably the best one, or?
Uh, you know, I think the B, I like the B, but just because I was more familiar with it.
Mhm.
I like the D, but there were some peculiarities of it. but I would have been happy flying the B or the D the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And then I started flying the Hornet, and that became so nice.
Yeah.
Much easier to land. The Charlie version was a lot easier to land than the Echo and the Fox on the ship. So I got to fly all variants except the G of the Hornet. So that was pretty cool. And it's weird because the first time I tanked in the Hornet, because I went through a real quick Cat 4 syllabus in the RAG, I CQ'd in the fleet, and the first time I tanked in the Hornet was at night. And I'm like, this is a piece of cake. I mean, because it's like the pro was like right there. I mean,
Yeah.
it was so stinking easy. And I think I told Beth that jokingly, being an LSO, I got to fly all the airplanes.
Mhm.
And I came back into the ready room one day and I said a caveman could fly a Hornet and a dead man could fly an S3. And the S3 Bubbas found out about that. And I was not on their good list for a long time. So,
Yes.
Oh no.
Well, it's interesting to have these conversations because when we were talking with Rattler, he was saying how easy the F8 was, and I was like, or sorry, he was
The
how easy the
F14.
F4 was, or sorry, the F14
F14,
was,
yeah, from the F8,
and then
yeah.
he's like, well, the real challenge was flying the F8, and I was like, I've only heard people tell me how hard the F14 was to land, like
it was
compared to the Hornet.
the F8 must have been extremely difficult because the F14 was hard to land.
Yeah.
It got a lot better when we went to the digital flight control system in the Tomcat. But it was a beast.
Mhm.
If you weren't on top of that thing all the time, it could get ugly really quick. But it was DFCS helped a whole lot, but it was still hard to fly. The E2 was easy to fly, but it was hard to do well. Everything else was pretty easy. The Hornet was, piece of cake, especially the Charlie model. It responded so well.
Hmm.
It was on the ball. It was like a dream. It was like, oh, this is sweet. So I got to the point that I'd fly the Tomcat in the day and fly the Hornet at night. I'd have to fly the Tomcat at night every now and then, just to,
Keep doing it.
keep up to speed. But yeah, the Hornet became my plane of choice at night. So.
Yeah.
Was it your
CAG has
plane of
those
choice
options.
in general too? I mean, it sounds like you really loved the Hornet compared to the Tomcat, but if you had to choose one today, I mean, which one would you prefer overall?
That would be hard because I really did like flying the Hornet. I mean, it was a great airplane, good systems, good reliability. I liked flying single seat. The later models had a great radar. The E and the F had a great radar, great systems, and we're talking decades of difference in technology. So the technology in the Tomcat didn't evolve as quickly as the Hornet did, because they put the emphasis in the Hornet into continually making it better, and that was the right thing to do by writing, software for the proms and the Hornet. They would for the flight, for the flight characteristics. They were always improving that, where you could point the nose, you could be falling out of the sky like a cartoon safe, but you could still move the nose around,
Mhm.
which was great. The Tomcat, you'd fall out of the sky and you never know where you're going to end up in that thing. So.
Hi, everyone. Hate to break in. Thank you for joining us on this episode. And please return next week where we're going to talk about Roe Skid Massey's time in two squadrons that were in the midst of pretty serious transition and the end of his aviation career and the lessons that he's learned as an aviator.